Okay, this is a list of all the accounts that SMCHA has. Our checking account is at the Midtown's Credit Union. We began the year with a balance of $32,355.49. Then you can see the summary of the income, followed by a summary of the disbursements. And you see that we're ending the year with a balance of $12,596.09. Anybody have any questions? I'll be happy to try and explain anything that you have questions on, or see me after the meeting. I'll be happy to visit with you about any part of this. Okay, then we have an endowment with the Monbridge Community Foundation. Began the year with a balance of $139,648.18. Had some contributions, some interest, and unrealized gains, some expenses, and we ended the year with a balance of $163,226.53. We have a cemetery endowment fund at the City State Bank. The year began $4,984.85. Annual interest, meaning balance is $5,012.34. Second page, we have an immigrant house building fund with the Monbridge Community Foundation. We started with, it was just new at the beginning of the year, we had about $10,071.29. Had some contributions, some interest, some distributions, and we ended the year with a balance of $39,673.24. We also have an education fund endowment with the Monbridge Community Foundation, began the year with a balance of $16,841.80. Some interest, unrealized gains, paid some administrative fees, and then the scholarship that we paid came out of this fund, $2,000, and we had a balance December 31 of $17,039.26. We also have a capital improvement fund with the City State Bank, meaning balance of $1,356.10, interest, and an ending balance of $1,363.60. And then we have two passbook savings accounts at the Midtown Credit Union, meaning balance $29.42, ending balance $29.26.46. And then the immigrant house passbook is, we're eventually going to have a checking account for the immigrant house, and we need to have a passbook account for that, so we just open one and there's a balance of $25.02. So those are the accounts that SMCHA has, and any questions, anytime, please free to contact me. Any questions now?
Well, Roger, does any of the scholarship fund come out of the scholarship fund?
Yes.
We have 17,000 here. Does anything come out of there to pay for our kids?
That's where the money to fund scholarships comes out of.
We need to take more money out of that to use for this purpose. It doesn't do any good sitting there. And the cost of college is so enormous that $1,000 just doesn't do much.
I vote yes.
Yeah, for those who did disperse 2,000 last year, that was just the same person because we had the money.
Well, I remember when Ozzie Garing gave that money, and they were eager to have it be used for educational purposes. And we're not using it very well at all. I know Kathy would be glad to see it used more of that be used.
Well, we have a committee that's.
How many applications are there per year?
For scholarships?
Yeah.
Well, like I said, last year there was one qualified application, the year before 0. The year before that there was 1 or 2. I've been on this scholarship committee for so many years, I can remember when we used to get 4, 5, 6, one year as many as think it was 10 qualified applicants. The spread is pretty clear. One thing I will say in reply is, one thing that the board has done, if we take the request to the board 2 or 3 times anyway in my history with the scholarship committee, is when we had a situation where it was obvious, hey, you know, we got 2 people going to AMBS, for example, spreading it out where our annual allowance was increased. You know, where having 17,000 in the account, we need that, you know, there's a possibility of, you know, Kerwin and I coming to the board and saying, hey, look, we've got this one and this one and this one this year. We would really like to go at least, you know, 1,500 or 2,000 again this year. And last year the board approved 2,000 for one because of the way the whole thing played. And of course she was in and everything. So.
And the fact that we hadn't paid any of the year previous
And
year.
not paying the previous year is the question of that has been where we've had this discussion before, and that's it's not a very good one to have again. Is where does more money come from?
Or more kids come from,
Yeah.
where are the kids that can benefit?
Well, this is something that needs to be worked on, but appreciate the comments and we'll take it under advisement. Okay, if there are no other questions, the third page is the proposed budget for the year. Receipts, we have transfer from the Non-Rich Community Foundation endowment for $7,000, donations $3,000, banquet sales of $2,500, book sales of $500, miscellaneous $320, and interest and dividends of $30, giving us a total of $13,350. And disbursements, the biggest one we have is keeping this place mowed. The mowing cemetery, $6,500, insurance $2,700, banquet $2,500, Microsoft $600, web service $500, utilities $300, postage and box rent $150, and office supply $100, giving us a total of $13,300. That's our proposed budget.
Okay, you've seen the proposed budget. Is there any discussion? Anybody have anything that they'd like to discuss that's on the list? If you didn't have a chance to look at it, maybe you can visit or look at one of your neighbors that has a copy of it there. It's fairly simple. One of the things that we do rely on is the match rate through the McPherson Community Foundation, and that's been a really good thing for us. Although this year I was disappointed in our total match contribution is 5,000 something, and it should be more than that. But we need to have everybody participate because that's the time when you can multiply the effect of whatever you donate. So it's a good thing. And this year our designated entity to have it was the Immigrant House Fund. So probably would be that next year as well, unless we have some other thing that we decided that's working. But in any case, 13,350 is what we anticipate we're going to take in, and we anticipate we're going to spend that. So, I entertain a motion to approve the budget, accept this new budget. Eugene moved and seconded by Kim. It's moved and second. So, is there any other discussion on the budget? If not, let's all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carried. Okay, thank you, Rick. Okay, Carol is not here. She can't remember and see if I'm in. So we won't have any, as I mentioned earlier, we won't have anything to report on the nominating committee at this time. But I'm excited because Sam Schultz is here, And Sam is the son of a guy that I played football with in college, and I didn't know, I didn't know you were a musician, I didn't know you were still around here, so that's awesome to have you here, Sam. So I think he's gonna try to do it without a mic, is that right? And we'll fill this room up. So we're gonna turn it over to Sam for some entertainment. Let's give him another applause.
Nice thing you guys do this on a Sunday after church. I didn't have to change clothes. Bring us back to the old Ben and I roots of bluegrass here. While we are living in this world of care, many the burdens that we have to bear. But there's a prayer bell in the Lord's right hand. Keep it ringing, He will understand. Prayer bells from heaven, Lord, how sweetly they ring. They ring their message under Jesus, their King. When you are burdened down with troubles and cares, ring on and on, for God will answer your prayer. Three Hebrew children in the plain were from, because the mortal king they would not harm. Jesus delivered and he came and saw. Prayer bells from heaven means a man named Paul. Prayer bells from heaven, Lord, how sweetly they ring. They ring a message under Jesus our King. When you are burdened down with troubles and cares, ring on and on, for God will answer your prayer. Oh, when Paul and Silas were both thrown in jail, they didn't worry who would go their bail. But on the prayer bell they began to ring. Off fell the stocks and they began to sing. Prayer bell from heaven, Lord, how sweetly they ring. They ring a message under Jesus our King. When you are burdened down with troubles and cares, ring on and on, for God will answer your prayer. This song's more of a contemporary song that my mother sang used to listen to a guy named Sandy Patty, mowing the yard, vacuuming the carpet, cleaning anything, and so I became pretty well versed with this stuff, and kind of ran out of stuff to do in churches, and I started picking up this contemporary stuff, which I'm lesser on liking, and it's became some of my favorites. So it's a little newer, but I hope you appreciate it. He who comes in the name of the Lord, blessed is he who comes. Oh, blessed is he who comes in the name of the Lord.
certainly didn't need Microsoft. We're great. We got a unique situation for our program. Where's Glenn? Glenn's there. Glenn, could you come up and introduce you? I think a lot of you know Glenn Ediger. I've known him for a long time. Glenn's done a lot of things, written books, he's done all kinds of research. He's an inventor. He's got all kinds of patents to his name, so he's an intelligent guy. Unfortunately, today we didn't get the technology to work exactly right, so he's going to be up there speaking from behind you and working the slides up there so they can follow his presentation on the screen up here. So, Glenn, you want to go up there? You want to say something first?
Well, no, I just want to make sure it's on. Do you hear me? Okay, I'll make sure, I'll do a check when I get up there too. So, good to be here. I kind of like it, you don't have to look at me.
He's a mystery man up above.
Okay. Well, thanks for asking me. That's what you get for drinking coffee in the hallway after church with Frank. We should be okay, so we'll go through it. Yeah, it looks like things are working. So if you can hear me, give me a thumbs up or something. So okay. About 11 years ago, I got interested in threshing stones, and my presentation is based on that. Talking to Brian Stuckey and other people, that we just didn't know much about threshing stones. I asked him one day, are you going to do a book or anything about threshing stones? He said no. He said go for it. So I did. So I did this book, printed 1,000. They're all sold out. I know Eden Church has 2 in their library. Some other churches have them in their library. But the basis of my book is this. You'll see that I go all over the place. Who knows what a threshing stone is? Literally raise your hands. Okay, I figured that would be good. Well, Bethel students know what a threshing stone is. Every year when they graduate, they touch the threshing stone on the way to commencement. This threshing stone is in the front of our house. I wanted to know more. Talk to people, I hang out with historians and history people and museum people, and nobody seemed to know much about it. In 1939, my wife's grandma, pictured here, lived north of Gossel. This is the threshing stone that's in front of our house now. I already had an interest in 1974. I did this drawing for the SMCHA church where I grew up to commemorate wheat. Can you find the threshing stone in the drawing? There's a clue. There it is. Why me? Well, I'm a Kansas farm kid. I grew up in western Harvey County on a wheat farm. And that was part of our family lifestyle. I'm a designer, which means I'd like to know not only how things look, but how they work, why were they made that way, and how are they used. I'm a patron of history. I got involved with Coffee Museum over 50 years ago, moving both Fast House and Gossel to Coffee Museum, and been on the board and chair of the board at that time, for one time. I'm a Mennonite, so I grew up with Mennonite values and very much treasure that experience. I'm a Bethel grad. And of course, threshing stone is the symbol of Bethel College. We inherited the stone, which I showed you pictures in our front yard. But no one had researched it yet. So I found it, the story was fascinating once I started exploring it. The story of threshing stones is a story that crosses numerous paths in history at the same time. These things that world politics, economic opportunity, Mennonite ethnicity, religious freedom, agronomy, geology, what were they made of and how were they made, world food markets, how the wheat supplied food to all over Europe, railroads, Kansas history itself, and immigration, and new opportunities for people. Curiosity started me on my quest. I needed to see how many I could find. So I started with our threshing stone in the front yard. And this is what I learned, and it became a book. The first one was easy, here it is. And throughout the presentation, on the right side, you'll see pictured from 1 to 100 the threshing stones that I found. I won't talk about most of them, but I'll mention a little bit. So what I did is I took the name of the owner, the community it was from, photographed it, found out what condition it was in, how was it displayed, what size was it, I measured each one, number of teeth, they do vary, and GPS location. There's 4 on Bethel campus, one in front of the ad building, one in front of the bookstore, one in top of the museum, and the next slide will show you the last one. So I'm going to jump to the end, if you can see it. These are the communities in which I found this many threshing stones. You'll see Mound Ridge has 9 threshing stones, Bueller, where I grew up, has 8. Newton has 19, because many people retire there and bring their threshing stones with them. By publishing, I had located 100 threshing stones. I found good, images from Greece to China to Kansas of different types of threshing stones that have been used throughout history. Low German is it a Low German or a Swiss Mennonite thing? I'll get to that. Coffee Museum has one in the barn. There's one in Newton, one in Marion. Low German and Swiss Mennonites. Swiss Mennonites are mostly on the east side of Turkey Creek and Pretty Prairie in South Dakota. But I'm a Low German, descended from Huffman's house. Went to Willis, and when it closed, I went to the city school, Bueller. However, I grew up on the east side of Turkey Creek and with a Mound Ridge address. And in high school and college, I made many lifelong friends from Mound Ridge. So I hope for this presentation I have some credibility. 2 are in front of my high school in Bueller. 2 at the north end by a monument in Bueller. You see the last one on the next page. But Low and Swiss Mennonite traditions are very similar, in spite of the differences between the old Turkey Creek, which was a big deal 100, 150 years ago, but I think that's certainly just a nostalgic story at this point in time. Our religious heritage, and I'm talking between Low German and Swiss Mennonite, our religious heritage is very similar. Farming and food production are common to both. Many of us were or are wheat farmers. There's the last one at Bueller. Inman has 2 threshing stones in front of their museum. So let's talk about the wheat. The history of wheat is really the history of civilization. Prehistoric humans chewed the wild-grass seed. About 10,000 years ago, they began to cultivate and primitive wheat, like this picture of emmer. That's a primitive wheat variety. Humans no longer just needed to follow the hunt. Now they stay in one location and develop communities. Farmers specialize in growing while others develop their trades. So culture really changed around food. Inman, threshing stone. Dawson Museum has 3 threshing stones. Those are 2 of them. Grain was originally just crushed and mixed with water for porridge. Wheat could be grown, harvested, stored, and traded for other goods. It was a commodity. Private property involved, a new concept. Symbols, language, and calendars were developed to work with the grain. There's another one at Dawson Museum, Hillsborough Museum, and another one at the Hillsborough Museum. Wheat is one of many cereal grains, but it is the most widely used grain in the world, even today. It exceeds rice, even as the most widely used commodity. Wheat is a grain with sufficient gluten to make it rise or make leavened bread. The Egyptians discovered how to make bread about 2000 BC. But they didn't know or understand that it was the yeast in the air that caused the bread to rise. Bread was used as payment, and another thing, and now food was also portable. Hillsborough Museum, this is the third one they have, in front of Alexander Church near Gossel. I'm guessing that is the most visibly seen threshing stone in the world. Tombstone in Indiana, a relative of mine actually. Farming used horses, but for only about the last 800 years has horsepower improved the efficiency of farming. The sustained power advantage of horses over humans is about tenfold compared to a flail and beating the wheat against the rock or people threshing on it, walking on it. It was a great improvement to use a threshing stone. Here's one in Mueller, another one in Mueller. I'm going to point this one out. It's the only one I found that was tapered. Almost all threshing stones are parallel lines. This one's tapered, so it's doing a circle better. Rural Newton. Mennonites farm with horses. These are all pictures from South Russia doing various tasks. There's a workhorse. There's a cart horse pulling my relatives, the Martins, that ended up in Bueller. Plow with horses. Spring toothing with horses. Drilling with horses. And spreading manure with horses. There's one in Newton, another in Bueller, and another in Newton. The farming sequence with wheat has been basically the same throughout history. You plant the wheat, you cut the wheat, you thresh the wheat, you winnow the wheat, and you end up with grain. All this can be done in your hand. You can pluck the wheat, you can thresh it in your hand, and you can winnow it by blowing on your hand to end up with the grain. And anybody that grew up on a farm has done this because you need to see if the wheat's dry enough to cut. But 150 years ago, it literally could take months of hard work to thresh wheat. Now it's done in seconds. There's 3 in Gossel. I didn't ask for permission, but Jerry Taves had 4, and he has some left. The threshing stone is pulled in a circle over harvested wheat using horses. There's a diagram to show it. The stone itself is 24-inch diameter and 30 inches long, and typically, most typically, with 7 teeth. And they weigh, I've weighed 3 or 4, and they weigh about 700 to 850 pounds. The process is the threshing floor. Typically, for Mennonites, would have been a hard-packed dirt floor, and it might have been on one farm, and other farmers would come use that threshing floor, and it was maintained year-round. The cut and dried wheat was spread on top of that threshing floor, about 10 to 20 inches deep. The horses pull the stone round and round over the wheat, and the thumping action of the stone is what knocks the grain loose. Workers, both men and women, turn the straw over, turning the straw to the outside and the wheat and the chaff go to the middle, along with the grain. And the straw goes, like I said, the straw goes to the outside. 3 stones, Newton, Downridge, and Newton. Swiss Mennonites were and are wheat farmers, but, and this is an important sentence, I do not have any concrete evidence that they used the threshing stones in Bohemia or in Kansas, in spite of the fact that there are many in the Mountain Ridge community. If you know of anybody that has written documentation of using a threshing stone in your family, let me know. There's a picture in Russia, New Russia, about 1900. You can see all those steps. Usually it's a young person, a boy or girl, riding the horse round and round. People in the middle are raking the wheat and chaff to the center. People on the outside are throwing the straw to the outside, while the person on the haystack is throwing down bundles of hay, wheat. Gossel. I'll comment on the bottom one. That's the most beat up threshing stone I found. I know who owns it, but I won't tell. New Russia, now Ukraine. The German agronomist, Alexander Pensos, went to Russia to study the Mennonites. I know the Ukraine, and I assume maybe the Volga community too, to see how they grew such good wheat and how they processed it. And it's written up in a scientific book. This is an etching from that book. They use wood pitchforks and wooden rakes. This is rural England. Inman, and Rural Mount Ridge. I asked permission. This is me and Jim Robb stretching stone. When I wrote the book, I didn't publish the location or the name unless I got permission from the people. There's another where there's 3 pairs of horses pulling 3 threshing stones for threshing. There's a drawing done by John Clausen in the 50s about his memory of threshing with threshing stones. So I got a lot of different images of how it was done. A unique one is a flag holder in Colorado. Now it's in Arkansas. Halstead Museum has one outside. Rural Gospel. Our history. This is, if Dale Schwab was here, I was going to say this is the quickest Mennonite history lesson you'll ever get. The Reformation started in about 1517, and a Baptist baptized first time in Switzerland in about 1525. Menno Simons was a priest in the northern part of the Netherlands and became a part of the Reformation. There's a picture of him. He believed in the ministry of Jesus. In believers' baptism, meaning in many cases adult baptism, in pacifism. The Sermon on the Mount was fundamental to his faith and to most Mennonite faith today. Then persecution in the 16th century caused migrations from Germany, Netherlands, Switzerland to various parts of Europe, ending up in South Russia. There's one in Newton, Mount Ridge. I didn't ask permission, but I know who those are. Migration for religious freedom in the land. Mennonites were recognized as good farmers. My ancestors were low German Mennonites. They went to Prussia, and after about 200 years there was limited land and loss of freedoms. Swiss Mennonites moved via various routes eventually to the Bohemian region of Russia from about 1790s to early 1800s. Captain the Great had invited these groups to develop the steppes of Russia into productive farmland. They were very successful in accomplishing this. But after about only 50 or 70 years there, both groups had limited land and the fear of losing privileges. They were invited to North America. Newton, rural Walton. Kansas is a new state. The Louisiana Purchase opened a new territory. The Civil War was over. There was decimation of bison herds. There was relocation of indigenous peoples to Oklahoma. Change from water transportation now to rail. There was a desire of the U.S. government and the state of Kansas to develop economies. Valley Center, Bueller, McPherson Museum has one. Picking Kansas. You may have seen these posters at different places over the time. But one of the largest marketing campaigns ever launched up to that time was to get immigrants to Kansas. Inman. This is the Germans from Russia organization in Lincoln, Nebraska, the middle one, and one in Hutchinson. Kansas sales pitch. Here's a brochure that was printed in the 1870s to entice people to come to Kansas. I'm going to take time to read this quickly. The climate of Kansas is without exception the most desirable in the United States. The winters are short, dry, and pleasant, but with little rain or snow. The grass is green in the forest and on the prairies until midwinter, and very often herds of horses, mules, and cattle roam at large during the entire winter. At the close of February, we are reminded by a soft, gentle breeze from the south that winter is gone, and grand prairies interspersed with every variety of flower is a scent of superb grandeur. During the summer, there is always a cool, refreshing breeze, which makes even the hottest days and nights pleasant and delightful. The soil is deep, rich, and fertile, demonstrated by the luxuriant growth of the prairie grasses. Who wouldn't want to live there? There's Heston. There's a farm by Heston that has 3 threshing stones. The railroad. The Atchison, Topeka, and Santa Fe gave great incentives to pick Kansas. There's a map of Kansas at that time with their right-of-way with property on every other section about 20 miles on either side of the rail route. rural Hillsborough. On Peabody Main Street, has anybody ever noticed this? It's south end of Main Street, there's one threshing stone that's cut into 4 slabs and incorporated into this monument. Hillsborough. So, for land and freedom, the prairie was ready for development. Atchison, Peak, and Santa Fe obtained land rights to the fertile Kansas land. They needed immigrants to develop the land and grow crops to ship back to the east. Mennonite farmers were looking for new land. Immigrants would need goods shipped by rail. It was hoped that these immigrants would help tame the Wild West. But it was at the expense of the indigenous people, the bison, and the virgin prairie. Goddard, Hutchinson, breadbasket of the world. Mennonites brought with them the skills of farming, including wheat plowing, summer fallow, fertilizer. Okay, that was the camera, not my computer. So hopefully we'll make it. The Mennonites brought with them the skills of farming, including, I already said that, and fertilizing with manure, turkey red, hard winter wheat, promising to make Kansas a sea of wheat. The Mennonites had great clout in getting good deals from the railroad. It was the largest private land deal ever made in the whole country. That's hard to realize. Many Mennonites also came with lots of money. Not all of them, but many did. And it didn't take long for the implement dealers to discover this and making the threshing stone obsolete. The threshing machine already existed, so many threshing stones were never used or very minimally used. Rural Inland, Newton, Pawnee Rock. Mennonites mostly settled in 4 counties. Here's a Santa Fe map of the area where primarily Mennonites settled. The red sections are sections that have been sold. You'll see the communities and some of the town, the churches that are located there. You see Hupkinsville and my Hupkinsville. These are the same areas with the majority of threshing stones were found. Rural Gossel, Private Newton. These 2 were owned by Jerry Wall family. There's been a few, but you notice the top is hollowed out. That was done after they had no other use. People would hollow out the top and put salt blocks in there and put it in the corral for the cattle. They brought wheat. Along with proven farming skills, Mennonites brought turkey red, hard winter wheat. The Worthington family, milling family in Russia, was experimenting with wheat varieties and heavily promoted the turkey red's broad use. Folklore has stories of families bringing bags of hand-picked seeds in their trunks back to Kansas. Again, we are looking for written diaries or histories of that being written down. It is folklore, but we'd like to have it in writing from somebody that lived through it. Heston, Newton, and Newton. Bernard Worthington. During the U.S. and Canada, he reported he would recommend that people come to Kansas as the soil and climate were like theirs in Ukraine, and the turkey red winter wheat would grow well. In 1873, he settled in Halstead, where he built a grist mill, and later built a large mill which still stands, as does the other one, parts of it. The significant advantage in wheat production was a significant advancement in wheat production was in 1885 when Worthington, along with the state of Kansas, shipped 10 to 15,000 bushels of turkey red wheat seed to Kansas. Frank, I remember when you lived in the house in the Halstead. Burton, Mount Ridge. These are 2 that were on the porch of Carl Crable in Mount Ridge. I didn't ask him permission. Turkey red wheat is significant in the history of Kansas agriculture. Today, most all Kansas wheat carries genetic legacy to turkey red wheat. By 1908, the year of Mr. Worthington's death, 100 million bushels of wheat were harvested by Mennonites and other Kansas farmers. Whitewater, Cedric, you notice that's cracked. Many of them are cracked. Several of them have, like that one, has a ring on top to tie up your horse to. Elk City, what could you do with it? Wheat. We grow it, we cut it, we thresh it, we winnow it, we mill it. Let's explore what we could do with it. These next three are also Carl Crable's plays. I photographed the ones on the front porch, but I got permission from his son to go look around, poke around, and I had to pull the weeds away to find these three in the backyard. Sweetlock, Baylock, or Two-Bay. It's an iconic low German Mennonite tradition believed to have its origin in the Netherlands. This picture of a pile of Sweetlock, thank you Lori Trott, she made those for some event. We often would have them for Sunday afternoon pasta. It's a double-decker yeast roll made with lard or butter that is traditionally served daily, or for summer afternoon pasta, Sunday afternoon pasta, weddings and funerals. I'm sure most all of us have had that. There's a threshing stone in the Steinbach Museum in Minnesota, Canada, a second one. And we can tell it came from there because of the stone they used was different. Here's the only threshing stone we found. I didn't take this picture, but it has in the North Dakota Historical Society. It only has 4 teeth. New Year's cookies, or selkie. I didn't grow up with that name. We call them New Year's cookies. Raisin fritters made especially for New Year's Day. The term porzelki means tumbling over. They turn over by themselves when done after being dropped into hot oil. They're presented different ways, plain or glazed or sugar, sprinkled in sugar or powdered sugar. People have their preferences. Kansas Museum of History has a threshing stone. They've just redone their museum, and I haven't seen, I'm sure it's still on display, but I don't know. In Gossel, Kansas, and another one in Gossel. Veronica, from Peru. A cherished food among Mennonites. That looks like my plate, I think. Dough pockets stuffed with dry cottage cheese, boiled, then fried, then covered in ham gravy. Like that. Around 20,000 are made each year for the Kansas Mennonite Relief Sale. I mentioned that possibly some of you have made those. You can look at the number of the threshing stone and tell about where we are in the presentation. This one is probably actually the most famous threshing stone. It was photographed and included in Isley's school books for children from about 1920 to 1950. So he talked about Mennonites using the threshing stone and had pictures of the threshing stone. I've already had an agreement to have that threshing stone at some point in the future brought to Bethel College. Here's the only threshing stone I found that doesn't have an obvious connection to Mennonites, and it was in Linden, Kansas. Gossel. Noodles. Every culture makes noodles, but it was a weekly staple on traditional Mennonite farmsteads. They're making noodles up in that church basement. They're served many different ways. It wasn't something I particularly grew up with, but from Canada to wherever other Mennonites are, it's very common. Maybe you grew up with that, noodles like that too. Gossel, Hillsborough, and Newton. Poppy seed rolls. Ever heard of those? Bachkuchen. A treasured Swiss Mennonite tradition. A pastry consisting of a sweet yeast bread with a dense, rich, bittersweet filling of poppy seed. Oh, I was going to say, every year Karen and I buy a poppy seed roll at the MCC sale and also at Bethel College Fall Fest. It's a tradition, even though I'm not German. Ika, Milan, Kansas, Caldwell, Kansas, and Museum. What a also uses wheat. Boderbrogi is a unique Swiss Mennonite ethnic food consisting of sweetened bean paste, baked in a soft boiled milk, and served with sweet cream sauce. You can correct me if I'm wrong on that. There's a Alberta, Canada museum in Wichita. The Threshing Stone 100 is in Texas. It's unique in that it's made of concrete and has 10 rooms. Every culture makes bread, and Mennonites excel at it, I like to think. A lot of the wheat around here was milled at the Alton Milling Company on the Turkey Creek River. I grew up about 2 miles upstream from this. Brian Stuckey grew up right in that area. But they made and Wayne Traub grew up in that area. My neighborhood, although I must admit I didn't know them in school because I went to Buer and they went to Mount Ridge. But they made the best lily white flour that was shipped all over the place. Very desirable for bread. Today, 60% of the small bag flour sold in the United States come from Ardent Mills in Newton, from wheat grown on the same ground where the threshing stones were originally used and settled by Mennonites. Here's a picture of my mom and dad the last year we farmed. Our field was on Dutch Avenue, east of our home place. Mennonites are not the first to plant wheat in Kansas. Many Kansas farmers helped making Kansas the wheat state. However, it could not be ignored that the Mennonite immigrants with experience and determination contributed significantly to its success. So, conclusion, Kansas did become the wheat state 150 years later, or even sooner than that, of course. Threshing stones were quickly obsolete as threshing machines already existed. But the threshing stone has become a symbol for discernment, separating the wheat from the chaff. Wheat created a great life for me and my ancestors, and I'm sure for many of you. Thanks. Should I come down, or do you have any questions?
Yeah, why don't you come down in front?
Okay.
I was just gonna say that for a low German, that was pretty good. And also, we do have poppy seed rolls down here for you afterwards, so.
I'm looking forward to that.
Yeah. But anyway, I have a question for you. He's on his way down here.
I can't hear you yet. Okay?
Can you hear me? Well, two things. One, about the construction. None of those were shipped over here from the Ukraine. They made them here, and did they source the limestone ground locally, or where did they?
That was one of the holy grails to see. It is written in books that they were shipped here from the Ukraine by the railroad and ships and stuff. I find no written evidence of that. No, I got permission to take little chips off of 11 threshing stones, and I had 2 of the state geologists study them, and independent of each other, they looked at it and they said these all come from the Peabody strata in Florence, Kansas. So all of them that I found, I believe, came from Kansas.
Were they, do you know how they were made? I mean, I assume they were hand
I wish I could give everybody a book, but anyway. They were chiseled out. They were probably, they could split the strata to get a chunk, and then they could actually, the limestone, if you work with it, it was soft enough, you could actually saw it with a handsaw into blocks, and then so consistently in the dimensions and the chisel marks, they might have sawed or take a hatchet and chopped into V, and then going back with little chisels, because you can see, look at the threshing stone, you find one somewhere. There's all these little lines in it, and that's where they just precisely chiseled it. And I was told, I haven't found written proof of that, but they had a wood pattern that they brought from Russia that they could slip over. And there, just recently, long after I wrote the book, I found written evidence that their working team had some shipped to Halstead. And I know there were some shipped, we don't know from where, but 250 threshing stones were delivered to Newton by rail. So I have some written evidence of that.
Let's give him another round of applause. One other comment when you mentioned about the written evidence that they brought turkey red meat with them, I just know from my own experience, and my dad told me specifically that his grandfather, which would have been Joshua Peasley, Jacob Elder's son, who was also a pioneer, came over when he was a teenager, but he brought the seed. And he said, not only did we bring turkey red meat, we also brought the poppy seed, we brought blueberry, we brought bean seed, we brought apple seeds, we brought all kinds of seeds.
Is that written down in the diary?
I can write it for you. Well, it just comes by word.
I know, that's
Yeah.
the word, but we
Yeah.
want to find some writing.
Yeah, I know, I don't know if that's the right word, other than the fact that, I mean, he said it was so obvious that if you were a farmer, you brought your seeds with you, and everybody brought them. But I mean, they didn't write down how many fair underwear they had in there either, but they probably all had that and wheat in their trunks, and they brought them over here. So that's great.
So Glenn, do you know, did bindweed come over with the?
Bindweed, tumbleweed, Russian olive trees, all things are considered invasive species, not necessarily just from Mennonites, but came over from.
One other comment that I'd like to make is that, you know, we were joking about the Swiss Mennonite, the Low Germans and whatever, but in all of our literature here that we're putting together for our immigrant house, we're trying to be as inclusive as we can. We don't say only Swiss Mennonites. So particularly, we want to bring the Holmans into the issue, into our fold, because if you were at some of the celebration things and listened to some of the Holmans speak, they said that the Swiss Mennonites were vital to the existence of the Holmans, because without them, they would have starved, they wouldn't have made it, without the help of the Swiss Mennonites who were living here. So the Holman story is intertwined with our story, and we want to try to make sure we bring that into our immigrant house information. So with that, if there are no other questions for Glenn, any other questions for Glenn? With that, we're going to adjourn this meeting, and we will go downstairs and have our refreshments, which consist of poppy seed rolls that we're talking about. And I really appreciate all of you being here. When you're leaving, please stop by and buy a book or two, because I don't want to carry those books back home. Thanks for being here.